first time that an African country presides over the G20, and the first time the Leaders Summit is hosted on African soil. This meeting takes place 2 years after the African Union was admitted as a member of the G20. The admission of the G20, of the African Union to the G20, was a moment of great pride to all of us who had campaigned for years that our African Union, like the European Union, should be admitted as a member of the G20. This was particularly pleasing to us as South Africa, as we were the only country that is represented in the G20. We now, as South Africa, feel at home, knowing that our own continent, through its leadership, is represented in the G20. This represents another significant step forward in Africa's aspirations to become a strong, united, and influential global player and partner. Africa, in our view, is indeed a continent on the rise. Deepening our economic cooperation is essential for continental development and integration, building on our resilience and on our self-reliance and our sovereignty as African states. It is imperative that we build deeper collaboration and resilience within and between our countries. Investment and trade expansion must be at the center of our economic engagement, particularly in the face of unilateral trade actions, tariffs, and erosion of WTO rules. We welcome the progress made in implementing African Continental Free Trade Area. Preferences are already seeing the benefits of this treaty. 4 days ago, I met with senior executives from South African companies with investments across the continent. Many of them outlined plans to substantially increase their investments across the continent. That is a clear demonstration that indeed Africa is on the rise, as our companies are now moving forward to invest across our various countries on the continent. We're particularly pleased that we should have this opportunity of meeting together as we are tonight, so that we can, as African countries, and indeed as a representative of the Caribbean, which is the 6th region of our continent, should share some perspectives on the process that has been underway for a year under the G20 process. When we were honored to become the president of the G20, we used the G20 platform to promote the Africa 2063 agenda. We have sought to position Africa as a vital partner in advancing equitable development. We have advanced priorities such as disaster resilience, debt sustainability, finance for just energy transitions, and harnessing critical minerals for inclusive growth. We established an Africa expert panel to reinforce Africa's voice on debt sustainability, on the cost of capital and financing for productive investment. We are encouraged by the ministerial declaration on debt sustainability, which outlines a clear acknowledgement of the growing debt burden on African countries and provides a basis for concrete action. We must work together to ensure that the commitments in this declaration, including to strengthen implementation of the common framework and extend support to countries facing liquidity challenges, are translated into meaningful action. To reflect our support for a stronger voice for borrowing countries in the global debt architecture, we have offered to host the inaugural meeting of the Borrowers Platform in South Africa next year in order to give impetus to the initiative and ensure that it is led from Africa. This follows one of the recommendations from the expert panel, which the lead expert in the form of our former Minister of Finance, Trevor Manuel, will speak to a little later. We have secured agreement on a G20 Africa engagement framework, which will enable a continued focus on the G20 finance track, on the issues that matter most to Africa over the next 5 years. By advocating for Africa's interests globally, we have sought to ensure that the continent's voice is heard on climate change, on the issue of debt, on trade and humanitarian assistance. Fair trade, inclusive prosperity, reformed global governance and multilateralism are fundamental to our vision for a more equal world. Yesterday, we concluded a G20 social summit, welcoming civil society organizations, think tanks, and academia to strengthen partnerships around the challenges that our people experience and confront. The outcomes of the social summit confirm the relevance and the value of the priorities of our G20 presidency. As African countries, we therefore need to use the G20 to advance our agenda. South Africa correctly felt that we need to put the interests of our continent on the global platform. By harnessing our collective strengths, we do believe that we can continue to highlight the many issues that the African continent wants the world to address. We are convinced that our beloved continent can overcome its challenges and become a leader in prosperity and development. South Africa's approach to its G20 presidency reflects our foreign policy principles, which are based on respect for multilateralism, respect for international law, peace, justice, equality, and respect for human rights. Nelson Mandela taught us that everyone can rise above their circumstances and achieve success through dedication and passion. It is us who must work together to make our continent prosperous, peaceful, democratic, united, and contribute to a just and equitable world. So tonight's session is an African session within the framework of the G20. We felt that as we go into the G20 summit tomorrow, it's important for us as African countries to come together, to share perspectives, to share ideas, and also to receive some important reports that we commissioned as South Africa to be shared and discussed with the G20 partners tomorrow. So I welcome you all, and I thank you for being present here. And tomorrow will be a very long day for all of us as we make our inputs and interventions. And as South Africa, we are hoping that we will have the Leaders' Declaration adopted, which will set a new agenda and a continuing agenda for the world, particularly the G20, which accounts for about 85% of the global GDP. The approach of Africa in all this, in our view, is important, and the views and perspectives that will be shared by Africa with the rest of the world are very key and important, and it was for this reason that we felt that those African countries that are attending this G20 should get together so that we can share without obviously impinging on the participation of other countries that are part of the G20. As we have dubbed this G20 an opportunity for Africa to highlight its key issues, and as South Africa have sought to do so, it was important that we should get together. So beyond this opening, we will then deal with some of the key G20 declaration, key highlights very briefly, which will be presented by Minister Lamola and our Director General Dengo, and thereafter we will get a report briefly on the expert panel, and thereafter we will adjourn for dinner and continue with some informal discussions. With those words, I welcome you all and thank you for being here. And I then would like to give the media the opportunity to go and rest, because they've been very busy the whole day. And usually by this time, they should be preparing to go to bed. So we give you the opportunity to then go and rest, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you very much, media. Thank you.